Okay, first of all, Hurricane Helene. I wanted to get this out of the way right off the bat. I will be discussing Hurricane Helene, the flooding, all the terrible stuff in a little while. I don't want to make it political. I don't want to do a bunch of stuff there, but we will discuss it here in a little while. I wanted to talk about something else to open up the show tonight. Because John Kerry came out and said something recently, which I will play for you in a minute, not yet, but he said something recently about how annoying the First Amendment is. We'll get to that. But I need to discuss the leaders of Western civilization with you right now and how they think. Because we need to understand this, because it will explain so much of how they act, the things they do, the things they say, that we look and it's almost nonsensical sometimes. I don't understand. Why would they do this? Why would they do that? Well, you know how I tell you the 3 characteristics all of our leaders have in common? We've talked about this a million times, all of them. Now that we've had a poisoned, rotted culture take over our country, all 3 of them, they apply to everyone leading this country. No love of country, no connection to the real world. They don't know how normal people live. And 3, this is important, they see themselves as kings and queens, not senators or presidents or members of the House or even CEOs or what. They don't see themselves that way. They see themselves as kings and queens. And what's the difference? Let's discuss that really briefly before we go into why they hate us. What is the difference? Well, we don't fully appreciate this. Even I don't, because I don't have any other perspective. In America, we are free. What does that really mean? We love to sing about it, hand over our heart, July 4th, look at the fireworks, but what does it mean to be free? Well, what it means is you are not just a cog in the wheel. You're not just a peasant who has to do what he or she is told by the people in charge. To be a free person, to be free means you are a unique, God-breathed soul with rights nobody on earth can take away from you. That's what it means to be free. And if you're in charge or one of the political leaders in this country, what it means for you is you don't get to do all the things you might want to do to the masses because your power is limited and they are free. So if you are a senator, a CEO, one of the World Economic Forum types, a president, and you see yourself as this king, and that is how they see themselves. Remember, they see themselves as being way above us, kings, queens. All we need is their thoughts and their ideas, and they will govern us all. If that's how you see yourself, and that's how they see themselves, well, then the rules of Western civilization, the limits Western civilization puts on them, they hate them. They can't stand them. It's like a cheetah on a leash. He just wants to run and be free. He has so much he wants to do, and these rules keep holding them back. You know, you enjoy being free? Let me tell you something. Every single Democrat and the Republicans in leadership, this applies to them as well, in this country, they despise you, and more than that, they despise your freedoms. They hate it. As much as you love it, they hate it more. And because we live in the information age, this is the social media age, information age, and there's a lot of good that came from that, a lot of bad that came from that. One of the bad things that has come from the social media age is this. People just put all their thoughts out online all the time. Nobody, you can't stand in line for 5 extra minutes at McDonald's without getting on Twitter. Line is so long. Hashtag McDonald's. People just have to vomit out all of their thoughts. That's a bad thing. But the good thing is we do constantly get a window now into how the communist sees himself and how the communist sees you. He can't help himself. It used to be private letters to his communist friend across the globe. Now it's on video. Now they print articles about it. The good news about the overshare society is that mentality I just described, how they see themselves as kings and queens, it's on display at all times. They'll allow me to point you to the New York Times. The New Yorker, I'm sorry. This is a title. This is a legitimate title. I didn't make this up. Is it time to torch the Constitution? Some scholars say it's to blame for our political dysfunction and that we need to start over. Oh, you didn't think that was all, right? You did hear what I just said about how they see themselves as kings and queens and how they really, really hate your rights. That's what gets them. It's those freedoms you have. Why are you saying whatever you want to say? How could you question them? How could you question the king? Well, I'm grateful we have people like John Kerry to confirm my suspicions.
But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways.
If you really, really listen to that, and in fact, Mr. Producer, I'm sorry, I'm doing this on the fly here. I might ask you to play that again. If you really, really listen to that, there are a couple things that stand out to you. They scream at you. First, the First Amendment, your ability to speak freely. Man, it means everything. If you've ever opened up a history book, people have been arrested and murdered for speaking out against the powerful, against the government throughout the history of the world. And our founders were so terrified that that kind of rule could come to America. They ensured it was in the Constitution that you are allowed to speak freely, question governments, question doctors, question scientists, question the military, question everything that is your God-given right as a free American. One thing you will see when I have him play this again is when John Kerry describes it as not something wonderful, not something to be treasured. He describes it as a major block. But maybe the part that stood out the most to me and the part that very much should stand out to you is what John Kerry wants done with it. You notice the language he uses when he's describing the First Amendment. And he said, if we didn't have that, what would we do? In fact, I'm going to want you to play this again right about now, Mr. Producer. I'll point to you. But if we didn't have this First Amendment, what would we do with the people and the information we didn't like? Please play it again.
But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways.
You heard it that time, didn't you? If that pesky First Amendment wasn't holding John Kerry back, what would they do to you, to your rights, to speech they didn't like? What would they do? You heard him, you said it. What would they do? Hammer it out. Does he look at this problem of you having different opinions of him as an opportunity to persuade you, as an opportunity to win you to his side? Communist doesn't think in that way. If he didn't have this annoying First Amendment, he would just hammer out the problem, just like communists have always done. Do not discount for a moment how violent the people who lead Western society are. It is a fragile fabric of laws holding these people back from becoming the worst monsters in human history. And again, because we live in this era where everyone's on camera, everyone's writing an article, they're constantly out there discussing it. Consider for a moment the American media, of course. The American media, you know how despicable they are. They serve as simply a communist mouthpiece, a protectorate on behalf of the regime. And it's all left, right? Especially on major networks, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, it's just all left. You've got your firsts out there, it's Fox News out there, some other channels out there, but the main ones are all left. So it's interesting. What's AOC mean when she talks about going after the media?
We're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
We're looking into it. Gotta hammer it out, you see? There's a problem there, and I just gotta take a hammer to it. That's, of course, how they think. And look, I'm gonna wrap all this up because I think you get the point, but this guy, Frank Leibowitz, went on Bill Maher's show, and people were angry about what he said. Look, what he says here is horrifying, but what he said didn't surprise me at all because I long ago accepted the people who lead the West feel like this about you, your rights, our institutions, about any checks on their power. The Supreme Court has been the ultimate check on communist power, especially over the last few years. So what have they want done with it?
What Biden should do, not that you asked, but when they passed that law, the Supreme Court passed that ruling, where they said, you're not the president, you're the king, which is what that ruling is. You can do whatever you want. You can never be, held responsible. I thought, Biden's still the president. No one seems to notice, but Biden should dissolve the Supreme Court.
Dissolve the Supreme Court?
I'm the president. I'm the king now, like you said, and go home.
That's Fran Leibowitz. I think I called her Frank. It's Fran Leibowitz right there. They're very honest if you simply listen and accept what they're saying. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.